Well, hello there. Welcome to Daily Politics on Trust TV. On this show, we discuss and unpack issues around politics, policy and governance. My name is Abdullahi Ahmed, standing in for your regular host, Hamza Idris. Now, on our tidbits tonight, President Bola Tinubu has written to the House of Representatives seeking an amendment to the 2023 Supplementary Appropriation Act to accommodate 500 billion naira for provision of palliatives for Nigerians. Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, read the President's communication at plenary on Wednesday. He says the request became necessary to enable the government provide palliatives to cushion the effects of the removal of subsidy. The President urged the legislators to give his request expeditious consideration and approval. The Speaker of the House, after reading the request, says the House will consider the President's request.
I write to request the approval of the House of Representatives for the amendment of the 2022 Supplementary Appropriation Act in accordance with the attached. The request has become necessary in order to, among other things, source for funds necessary to provide palliatives to mitigate the effect of the recent removal of fuel subsidy on Nigerians. Thus, the sum of 500 billion naira only has been extracted from the 2022 Supplementary Appropriation Act of 819 billion 536 million 937,815 naira only for the provisions of palliatives to Nigerians to cushion the effects of fuel subsidy removal. While I hope that the House of Representatives will consider this request expeditiously, please accept, Right Honorable Speaker, the assurances of my highest consideration.
Now, in the Red Chamber of the National Assembly, the Nigerian Senate has initiated another investigation into the alleged uneven distribution of a 483 billion naira loan to medium and small-scale enterprises across the country's 6 geopolitical zones. The loans provided for by the Development Bank of Nigeria, DBN, in 2021 has prompted concerns about regional disparities. This investigation follows a previous inquiry by the 9th Senate, which examined claims that the Southwest, particularly Lagos State, had received a disproportionate share of the loans. Now, despite the DBN's assertion that they followed regulatory criteria rather than regional factors, Senator Muhammad Ali Ndume and several others were dissatisfied with the previous investigation's outcome and recommended a fresh look into the matter. Ali Ndume highlighted a significant discrepancy in loan disbursement, with the northern states receiving only 11%, while Lagos State alone obtained 47% of the funds. Now, the breakdown revealed that the southwestern part of the country received the largest proportion of 57%, followed by the south at 17%, the north central at an FCT at 11% each, and the southeastern part of the country received 9%, and the northwest at 5%, whereas the northeast received a meager 1%. Now, senators agreed that the Senate would conduct a new investigation to address the disparity, while calling for a review of the loan access criteria to ensure a more equitable geographical spread. However, Senator Jibril Issa noted that the DBN, being partially owned by the international lenders like the World Bank and the IMF, cannot unilaterally alter the criteria. He suggested that Nigerian enterprises unable to meet the DBN's requirements should consider seeking loans from wholly Nigerian-owned intervention banks such as the Bank of Industry and Bank of Agriculture. Now, to unpack the conversation tonight, we are going to look at this particular issue alongside many others on Daily Politics tonight as we delve into Nigeria's rising cost of living occasioned by certain policies of the Tinubu-led administration. As you might have known, petrol now sells for about 500 naira per litre across the country, leading to an exponential increase in the price of goods and services, exacerbating an already bad situation. What measures can the federal government apply to mitigate Nigeria's rising and worsening living conditions? Will there be palliative for Nigerians, and when will they come? How soon will Nigerians breathe the proverbial sigh of relief? And when will these questions be answered? These are some of the issues we will try to unbundle and unpack on tonight's conversation. And joining me to do so is Dr. Umar Binder. He is the former National Coordinator of the National Social Investment Program, NSIP, under the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development. Doctor, good evening, and thank you very much for coming on the program tonight.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Right. Yeah. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back in a moment to kick off the conversation. Join us again. All right, let's get the conversation underway. Doctor, your initial thoughts on where Nigeria is right now as a country. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, months ago, you were running the show on the with regards to the NSIP, and this is one of those vehicles that government has designed to address issues around poverty, issues around human capital development, and so on and so forth. What do you make of the current situation of the country, especially in light of the removal of subsidy and how life is a lot more difficult for Nigerians than what it used to be just 2 months ago?
Well, thank you very much. I think, first of all, the reality is that there's a new administration, literally like a month and a half ago. And it is very, very evident that this new administration is prepared to hit the road running. And there are so many things happening so quickly that Nigerians have ever seen. Yes, the issue and the subject matter is the removal of the oil subsidy, meaning fuel, literally. The cost has gone up, and what that means is if a Kekena Pep used to fill their tank for 1,000, it's now going to 3,000 or 5,000. It means the poor old woman who used to take her dadawa from the house to the market will now have to pay for this increase, meaning she was already vulnerable, so she'll be more vulnerable. The man who used to carry his sugar cane from one point of where he sources it to the market will have to pay more. And certainly those who don't have anything to do, when they want to move, they have to look for money. So it is very clear that yes, there are reasons for removing the oil subsidy, and the government, as you've seen, the president is trying so hard to hit the Senate, to hit the House of Representatives, to ensure that Nigerians are aware that he's trying to do his best. It's actually poised to ensure that these palliatives start following. Even myself, I attended a virtual meeting on these matters. But certainly, yes, the NSIP is still there to look at the poor and vulnerable level. I'm sure you are aware that the labor itself has put their concerns that this is the interest of workers when they move from one point to the other. And there are so many states that have also started popping some few programs here and there to cushion the effect of this removal of oil subsidy. So yes, poverty is very high in our country. It's a priority for any government to quench this poverty. Poverty causes insecurity. Insecurity recreates poverty. So it's a vicious circle. I'm sure while we consider the macro issues, the economy, the exchange rate, the interest rate, we also have to very, very strategically concentrate on the micro issues, issues that affect the poor and vulnerable. And you can see the signals that the administration really is intended to get on with it. Well, while there seems to be some sort of support domestically and internationally for the president's removal of subsidy on day one in his inaugural speech, there are also a lot of people who, in hindsight, say, listen, perhaps he did put the cart before the horse, which is not the ideal situation. The conversation around safety net or cushioning the effect of subsidy removal should come first before the subsidy is removed. What are your thoughts about whether the effects of the NSIP itself, the program that you headed for quite some time, should have given the current administration enough shock absorbers before the administration could think of something else? Well, it's true. On one side, the administration is anxious. It has its own plans and strategies. Even during the campaigning period. They outlined some of the things that they wanted to do. Certainly, a lot of people believe that they should have consulted more. But I mean, some school of thought believe that Mr. President, just get on with it. This is an experienced politician. He was there at the highest level, at the state level. He's a businessman. He's an international person. And Nigeria has something so unique, even under NSIP that we saw. If you say you have to get everything ideally okay before you launch something, you would be there forever. So the NSIP, as you know very well, concentrates on the social support at the bottom of the pyramid. Every single beneficiary of the NSIP, whether it is N-Power, whether it is school feeding, whether it is the JIP or the cash transfer, none of these people are actually employed. So it is not a labor thing. You know, labor people are already employed. They're just saying what we get is not going to be enough. But the whole beneficiaries, N-Power, graduates unemployed, non-graduates. So this is the class for the NSIP. And NSIP will continue to look at this.
Yeah, but Doctor, what do you say to people who say, listen, the president just sent in a request of 500 billion naira to the House of Representatives, obviously money that he needs to address this particular issue that we're talking about. Is the understanding that already there's not enough that has been budgeted for going into this year? Are we saying that NSIP pretty much ran out of money even before President Tinubu came on board? What is the situation? What can you tell us about that? Because it is surprising to most Nigerians that he's already asking for more money just 2 months in.
Well, actually, I don't know the details of how much the country will save in real sense when you remove the oil subsidy. So something
they say the monthly payments are around 4 billion.
Good.
400 billion, I beg your
all right. So something makes me feel like there will be money somewhere saved. But let me give you some arithmetic. In NSIP, as we speak, if you go to the website of the National Bureau of Statistics, you will see that we have between 20 to 35 million graduates walking the streets of Nigeria unemployed. If you take only 1 million, and you put it on the N-Power model we have now, which is a 30,000 naira stipend for 1 month, every month we have a 30 billion naira bill. And in 10 months, it's 300 billion naira. So when you hear 500 billion naira for palliatives, I hope the people who are doing the calculations actually have gotten it right, because it is a very, very expensive business to provide social safety.
Yeah, okay. And we're talking about the impacts and the effect of the NSIP, for instance. I mean, I've seen some beneficiaries who have success stories from the various classification of the program, but there are a lot of people who call to question its effectiveness, especially since the administration is just barely 45 days in right now. How come the effects have already worn off? Just 40 days into a new administration, you would have thought that, you know, all those beneficiaries of the N-Power program, the JIP program, the cash transfer program would have been able to at least absorb the shocks of subsidy removal, but that's not what we're seeing right now.
Well, yeah, you see, impact based on impact assessment is one thing. Implementing programs is the other. I can tell you as an insider that the N-Power is very successful. It has carried these young graduates to teach, to work in healthcare facilities and agriculture over a period of 1 year, 2 years. Receiving the stipend, over 60% of them, as we speak now, have actually found something to do using the savings as they are, or being able to mainstream themselves into the system. When you look at the school feeding program, in addition to feeding the children...
You mean the controversial school feeding program?
Well, it's not controversial because if you don't understand it, you don't understand it. There are people who thought when COVID hit and then the president approved that we should follow these children to the houses with a bit of raw food is controversial. But when you get the details of what happened, it's actually not. But what I'm trying to say is that the effect of cooking over 200,000 cooks that have been harvested to cook for these children, literally all of them today are actually doing one thing or the other. The effect of saying homegrown, use the food in your own community to feed the children, has popped up so many small-scale farmers to be producing up to a level. In fact, they are the ones enjoying this oil subsidy now because their produce is selling at above.
Yeah, but doctor, how do we connect the dots, right? I mean, you know what you're saying about the effects or the impact of the program, for instance, right? But the data we have right now suggests that poverty has more or less increased over the past few years. So where's the effect? Are we saying that the scale of the solution is being outweighed by the scale of the problem? Is everything that the NSIP or through the activities of the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, have everything been overwhelmed by the scale of the problem, and that's why we can't tell the effect, because these numbers seem to be growing, because the poverty situation is still bad, if not worse, and the unemployment crisis that we're talking about is still there. So how do you explain that to Nigerians who say it's more or less money down the drain after all the billions and billions of naira we've spent over the years trying to keep people afloat?
Well, actually, it's very difficult as an insider to be defending these programs. It would have been nice to go to the streets and then get the data from us and interview people. But what I can tell you is that, yes, you are right on a point. The problem is overwhelming. I told you there are like 20 to 30 million graduates that are on the streets. The NSIP is only able to do 1.5 million. So that certainly can tell any Thomas that wants to understand that it's overwhelming. Secondly, remember the effects of COVID. When COVID hit 2019, 2020, all markets were closed down. So even people that used to go to the market to selling their yams and so on were actually left at home, and they dropped down to the below the poverty line. Those Kekena people that were running around, in thousands and thousands of them, picking people from one point to the other, making that 500 naira daily, stopped because they were locked down. So instantly, those kind of things will make sure that poverty just springs up very, very dramatically. In any state where there is insecurity, for example, in Zamfara state, it's impossible to control it, because today you think you are stable, tomorrow some bandits will hit a village, kill people, chase people away and so on, and poverty will just turn around. In Borno state, the National Bureau of Statistics were not even able to estimate this thing, because there are so many local governments that you cannot even visit. So the problem is big, and you have to be technical, systematic, and scientific about it. And what NSIP did is to be very scientific about it, developing institutions and techniques so that you can be able to do them systematically.
Okay, let's talk about that variation, the emergency funding that the president is asking for through that request to the House of Representatives. You look at that amount of money, right? And you're well aware of the multidimensional poverty index of the country and how many hundreds of millions of people are living below the poverty line. As you can see there from the data, right? 65% of the poor, almost 86 million people live in the north. Is this money enough to get the job done? Because we appear to always throw money at our problems, and we've been unable to solve any of them.
Well, you see, first of all, every Nigerian, our leaders and our non-leaders must understand that the problem is big. There is no country that will find it very, very
500
easy.
billion is a lot of money also.
It is, well, if this is just a number, but when you do the technical analysis of how much money that is required to cushion the effect of only one rain flooding many villages, 500 billion naira is nothing. This is what a social worker will tell you, a development worker will tell you. But when you have institutions, if you have people's capacity built, if you know the systematic process of following this, then it becomes easier. What Nigeria has to understand is that they must appreciate this institutional development. For example, 5 years ago, there was no pool of people that knew how to target young people, target them under empower, target schools for feeding, target women in the market for loans, target the conditional cash transfer poor and vulnerable. Nobody knew. But today, the expertise is there. Nigeria have the National Social Register that has never ever been done. Now we have it, where there is a database of houses that are poor and vulnerable all over the country.
And in talking about that, because we've had several conversations with civil society organizations who say some of this information is not available, it's not accessible. which brings to question the credibility or the integrity of the people that are actually behind this data. Do we actually have that data, and is it accessible?
The data is available and accessible. I would love to have any NGO or any individual that knows what they are talking and says, I want this data and it is not provided. This data is available. There's NASCO. So we have an office.
We could go to the website, for instance?
Yes, you can go to, but a big but.
Right.
You have to request for what you want. Right. For example, if you pick conditional cash transfer, it has the names of the people, where they reside, what is their BVN, their account numbers, their NIN numbers, and so on and so forth. These are good operational data, but you cannot carry it and hand it over to somebody. So you have to say, I need the number of people who are the houses that are poor and vulnerable in Gombe local government. I am sure our office will now give you the whole thing based on what you want. They will ask you, of course, what do you want to use it for? Oh, we want to just target poor and vulnerable households and help them with 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, we have it. We want houses only with where blind people live. We want houses where there are widows. We want houses where there are elderly people living. All that is segregated. We have over 150 indices on that data. So people who come on air and say, oh, the data is this and that, I am positive 100% that they don't know what they're saying.
So we could write to the ministry today and say, write a Freedom of Information, letter and say we're requesting access to the data as far as the social register is concerned, and we'll get that information. That's what you're saying.
Yes, you can get that, but you have to specify what you want. We can't give you the whole thing.
I just said it.
Yes, you can get it.
Right.
Write to either to the permanent secretary or to the office of the honorable minister, and you want information about poor and vulnerable households, any part of Nigeria, you will get it.
So we're not just talking percentages. There will be actually people, real names on that.
This is not percentages. Right. This is real. Look, even geolocations, we have the data. Okay. We will show you your house from Google.
Okay. Let's go down memory lane from the year 2000, right, to this point. We've had at least 7 to 8 different social programs that are either targeted at empowering people, safety net programs that are supposed to serve as interventions. From year 2000, we've had the poverty alleviation program. It morphed into NAPEP, which is a much bigger and broader one under the Obasanjo administration. Then there was NEEDS, there was YESO in 2013, Sure P, You Win, NPower came on board, NSIP alongside many other. All of these programs, by design and everything, were perfect. They were supposed to hit the nail on the head, right? It appears that this medication hasn't worked, because right now, from year 2000 to date, I dare say that our poverty level, our unemployment level has more than tripled. Why do you think these programs are failing to get the job done? Is it a function of design? What is at the heart of the problem?
I think there are many reasons why people think that they are failures. Each program has its own pros and cons and yeses and nos. But certainly you cannot outrightly say they have failed, because you don't know. And if you want to know, you know. But because, look, PAP 2000... But doctor,
if you go to a pharmacist right now, you have a doctor's prescription, give me this particular drug. Because, say for instance, you have a headache, right? You take that medication. Your expectation is that it's going to take care of the headache. And if it doesn't work, it's safe to say that it didn't work. That's exactly what is happening here. All these programs have not hit the mark. Poverty is still a problem. It's still a crisis that we're dealing with. Unemployment, human capital development, all of these things.
You know why? The reason is because...
Yeah, but do you agree that they have not...
They have not eradicated poverty totally, because one thing that this review tells you is that, first, poverty is a problem in Nigeria. Second, that our leaders actually know that poverty is a problem. So they keep introducing things based on their either political interest or whatever. But three, I've been part of many of these programs. And technically, I can tell you, I have served my share in this country, to be quite honest, on this, thinking that it can be done. You see, the issue is not you take money and you throw it and you'll disappear. Poverty is equated to the devil.
What does that mean?
What that means is that If you're a Muslim and normally when you start prayers, you say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitani rajim. That is, may God forsake Satan. That is the devil. The devil is everywhere. But it's also another statement, A'udhu billahi min al-faqr. May God forsake poverty. So mathematically, poverty and Satan are similar. And they're very unpredictable and they will never leave you alone. So poverty is not like medicine. Poverty is terrible. Poverty is what is causing Boko Haram. Poverty is what is causing communal clashes. Poverty is what is causing Fulani and herdsmen fight. Poverty is what is causing kidnapping. Poverty is what is causing cultism. Poverty is even what is moving some young people who want to divide this country. So this is a big problem for Nigeria. So when you talk about the effect, one, you need manpower. Second, you need consistency in the process of delivery. And third, you need funding. Manpower, let me tell you, despite the fact that poverty is a problem in this country, and we have over 240 universities, there's no university in Nigeria that has a course on poverty alleviation. We always have economics, development, physics, and so on and so forth. This, Nigerians should understand. This is your major problem. Therefore, you need to build the critical mass of people who know what to do and how to do it.
So if you can give us a short version of why poverty has remained undefeated in this country, you would say what exactly?
What I will say is that first, Nigerian institutions must understand that we must synergize, cooperate, and be coordinated. Second, Nigerian institutions must believe that we must partner to hit the target. And third, Nigerians must believe in Nigerian things and Nigerians.
Yeah, but a lot of people would counter that argument by saying, listen, all these programs seek to do is to put food on the table, to alleviate poverty, and to make people remain reliant on the government. That one sure way, one sure banker of getting rid of poverty is for people to have jobs, for the private sector to thrive, and for government to ensure and guarantee a serene environment where businesses could actually thrive, and therefore some of these situations can be addressed. Do you agree that there is a design problem and an execution problem with some of these programs? That's why we've not been able to consolidate on any of them all these years, and we're still having to deal with the same problem over and over.
The designs have a problem. The implementations have their problem. You see, when you close your eyes and you say private sector, people are thinking this is Julius Berger or Cadbury or Nestle. My mother, who has never been to school, is an embodiment of private sector. She knows how to fry nice fish. She can make puff. She knows how to fry akara. She can extract oil out of groundnuts. She can make yogurt as a poor family with Fulani woman. But she does all this as what we call as survival skills. She's just doing it so that we can survive. If you go to her with Jeep, and with 50,000 naira loan, you will turn my mother into a weekly contributor to the market with 2 bottles of oil every market they go into the market. This is how now you pick her up to understand that, hey, I can buy groundnuts on Wednesdays, I will extract my oil on Thursdays, and I will take my oil and koli to the market on Friday. Now you started structuring herself into a private sector, and that is what will lead to her employing her sister, because now she can be able to buy 2 mudus or 3 mudus of groundnuts to extract oil. She cannot do it by herself alone. So she invites, that is generating employment. And this is what Nigerians must understand, that at the micro level, there are private sectors. At the middle level, there are private sectors. At the highest level, there are private sectors. But when we talk of private sector, everybody is thinking of the highest. To get private sector to survive, to employ people.
But you also look at the current situation, for instance, right? Right now, we have people quitting their jobs because they can't afford transportation from their homes to their places of work because of the inflation, because of a hike in transportation fares, for instance. Those same petty businesses that you're talking about today are folding up because they're unable to make ends meet, right? How do you give a solution right now that could actually stop the bleeding as far as Nigerians are concerned? Because many people, to be frank, cannot wait 2 days, 3 days, 1 week, or even 2 months before the government comes up with something big as far as the solution is concerned.
All this is actually popping up because of the removal of oil subsidy. Now, oil subsidy in itself is not bad, but it is the targeting process. If Dr. Binder has a car, has a nice job, and can afford filling his tank every week, and an Abdullah who does not have a very good job cannot, and then the oil subsidy just hits us equally, that is the problem. But if the oil subsidy says, we we must find Abdullahi. We know Abdullahi required this. This is how we target him. Don't bother about Dr. Bindir. That is targeting. That targeting is a technical process, and that targeting is a specialization. What Nigerians don't have is the patience and the skill and the competencies to target properly. If we were targeting properly, nobody will remove oil subsidy. But because we were targeting wrongly, the wrong people benefited from it, and the people who targeted also benefited from it, and then the assumption is, fuel subsidy is for the wrong people.
Yeah, we've heard so much about this social register. What's the exact number? I've heard people talk about 50,000. What's the exact number?
The social register is the one we have is for households, not individuals.
Right.
And the estimate is that an average household will have 5 people in it.
Right.
What we have as we speak is around 13 or 14 million households in the database. Translating to 50 to 60 million people. This is the National Social Register, and it is ongoing. Every state has an office.
So it's safe to say, based on the Bureau of Statistics data, there are still a lot of people that have not been captured.
Of course, yes, a lot of houses. If you are thinking that this 133 million because of the multisectoral, people totally are misunderstanding that. That is not the number of people who are poor. It is multisectoral. Multisectoral is like a tank with many pipes.
Are you saying that it is more than that?
Of course. Well, the thing is that that particular is an index. Okay, it's not the number. A lot of people think there is a queue with 133 million people. That is not so. The poverty figure demonstrates that there are 83 to 85 million people who are at the line that has been said to be poor in this country.
Okay.
But that data, 86 million, might not catch an Abdullahi who have a job, who does not have a nice house. But once you don't have a nice house, if housing is part of the multisectoral, you'll be reflected in that multisectoral. Although you have a job, but your house is very bad. If I have a job, I have a house, and I'm not drinking clean water. If provision of water is part of the multisectoral, I will also be in that tank. But the real data of poverty are the poor and vulnerable, people who don't have so many of these basic needs.
Okay, I mean, you're saying there are levels to it. What I'm saying is everybody is poor as far as, the standard
of course, multisectorally, yes.
Okay,
yeah.
So we'll take a quick break. When we do come back, there's a lot more to unpack, and Dr. Binder will continue to give us insight on this and many other issues. So join us after the break for more on this conversation. All right, welcome back to the program. You're watching Daily Politics on Trust TV. Here's a quick reminder: you can catch up with all our content across social media. For more content across Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube live stream. Well, the conversation is centered on Nigeria's living condition crisis, how the inflation rate is going up and upwards without any sort of government intervention so far, especially following the removal of subsidy in the beginning, since the beginning of the new administration led by Bola Ahmed Tinubu. We have been in conversation with the former national coordinator of the National Social Investment Program, Dr. Umar Binder, who has been helping us unpack some of the issues here as we try to understand what is really at the heart of the problem, especially as the new administration is trying to prefer solutions to an already well-known problem in Nigeria, largely poverty, unemployment, and all the other socioeconomic issues that need to be addressed. Doctor, what sort of realignment do we need at this point? The president is asking for money. Nigerians are still eagerly anticipating it. He had a meeting with the National Executive Council. The governors were there. He charged them to do the needful. As you did point out earlier, some governments are trying to, on their own, at their own subnational level, trying to address certain issues. I think the River State Governor, Governor Fubara, just this day inaugurated free transportation scheme in River State, and I'm aware that some governors are doing their own bit. What sort of realignment do we need at this point, based on your wealth of experience from trying to address this same problem that has remained undefeated, and I must stress that? What do we need to do at this point? Because it appears to be a watershed moment where subsidy is finally removed, because itself has been an issue for a very long time. What sort of realignment do we need at this point so we can tackle these monsters of problems headlong?
Well, to me, we elect our leaders to lead us well. Concentrating and calling the president's name only all the time is one of the problems. This country has 36 states and the FCT. Every state has a governor. Probably each governor is trying to form his own executive council. Each government there has got a local government. That's the third tier. Each one have their own assembly, which is the wards council, and so on and so forth. It would be nice. President Tinubu has taken a 500 billion naira request. It would be nice to hear in the states governors taking their plan also to solve this problem in their state, even if it is 50 billion, even if it is 10 billion. So that now you know 10 billion times 36, 360 billion, because what the federal government is doing literally is just complementary.
Is this a money issue? Is this a money problem?
Well,
as far as fighting poverty is concerned,
the intention,
are we saying that there is no other way to address this issue other than throw money at it?
Well, the thing is, let me give you an example. I just came back from Niger State. His Excellency, the governor of Niger State, called some of us and says that I know whatever I do in this state, if I don't tackle the community kind of security challenges, I will continue to have problems. So what do we do? You see, he has a plan. And we sat down, we brainstormed, and we brought in all the traditional leaders so that the political leadership and the traditional leadership, all based on territorial control, can come together and brainstorm. This is it. But for you, even if you are putting people in a hall over 2 days, you need money to feed them. You need money to give them. So money is very, very important in this, because nobody...
No, but I'm saying, is it the main factor here? Because it appears that there is a dysfunction even when it comes to execution, for instance. Because we're talking about monitoring and evaluation mechanisms that have been implemented or that are part of this programs. I remember the former minister of the ministry talking about saboteurs within the system. You have independent monitors who are not doing their job, people inflating the figures of some of these commodities and so on and so forth. So it's clearly not just a resource problem. There is also a problem with the execution, right? And how much emphasis should we put on that?
Well, I think every request for resources has behind the scene the concept, the details of implementation. The only thing is that the money, the approval to appropriate and spend is the responsibility of the legislature. That is why you see money. But I'm sure when you drag back to the executive, you'll find a booklet of this nature, the plan, the timelines, the expected outcomes, and so on and so forth. So, but certainly, yes, you are right. The capacity to specially look at this is actually in short supply. I know. You know, this poverty solving, designing things, going to go and implement it, measure the impact and so on, it's not an easy matter. It's a very, very highly technical thing. Most people think you pick a university from a university professor from university, or you bring some diaspora character and then you give him assignment thinking he knows everything. That has not been able to succeed. It needs you to gradually build capacity, hands-on capacity. People need to go to the rural area. There are people who possibly in Abuja that have will claim expertise on poverty alleviation that have never ever spent 24 hours in a rural community where there's no hotel, there's no telephone signals, it is raining, you have to live in a thatch roof, the primary schools there are shared, and so on. They haven't. They have not experienced this to know exactly that this is very scary and so on and so forth.
Are you saying that there is a disconnect between the intellect behind this program design, the ones that are implementing and the people who are supposed to be beneficiaries?
There is a lot of that. There are a lot of gaps. It's not like zero, but there are a lot of gaps. So synergy will make you learn from each other, will make you utilize outputs of each other. The states and the local governments must be at the same level to understand what is happening. So I suggest that more interaction of the Economic Council and the Governors Forum to discuss this issue, so that if it is resources, you will see the resources flowing. If it is expertise, you will see the sharing and utilizing. Don't forget, you have other institutions that have been there for ages. You have SMEDAN that is looking at the small and medium enterprise. How do you form them? How do they function? And so you have NDE who is looking at employment in different forms. You have ITF that are looking industrial training and so on and so forth. And so many of these. You get what I'm
pardon the interruption. We started with that report, and I think we're just going to go and hear some of the soundbite with regards to those loans that were given out to small and medium enterprises across the country just over 2 years ago, and how the Senate is looking into that matter because of the disproportionate disbursement of some of those funds. We'll be back in a moment to double down on the conversation. Take a look.
During Wednesday's plenary, Senator Ndume raised the motion once again, prompting a divided debate on the matter, while some lawmakers insisted that the disbursement was not favorable to some regions. Others reminded them that the loan had criteria to be met.
They have what they call participating financial institutions, that is microfinance banks. So far the bank is using about 64 of them, out of which 60 are in Lagos. 4 only are spread around the other 35 states in the country.
If Senator Ali Ndume felt so bad about this, then let's go ahead and set up another ad hoc committee to give it a second look, and looking at all these criteria that has been set or put in place by this development bank, and see if the region or all the regions in this country has been given a fair hearing in terms of access to this loan.
The area we are supposed to look at now is the criteria. But as I'm talking to you, 66% of these funds have been paid back. And the bank is only basing their criteria on the basis that you'll be able to repay this loan, so that it will be an evolving loan. So this is basically the issue.
According to them, the requirements were not met by some geopolitical zones.
And with the further explanation that the bank in question is owned by various international agencies, including the IFC, and it's not a wholly owned Nigerian bank. So it's business. They may want to set their own criteria. And so the criteria for the states that are outside Lagos may not be able to meet the criteria. And somebody also said that they were very interested in the collateral. And so if the collateral is located where they feel they cannot reach, if there was a breach, they may not accept.
The Senate therefore resolved to take another look at the matter and report back in 4 weeks.
Right, those were the thoughts of some of those senators with regards to that DBN loan for small and medium enterprises across the country. 57% rather of that portion went to the southwestern part of the country, 17 to the south. The north central and the FCT got 11%, the southeast got 9%, the northwest got 5%, and the northeast got a meager 1%. Now, there's a political side to the argument, which we're not going to get into, but let's talk about the economics. Doctor, what are your thoughts about this? Because this disparity is obvious, but as we were listening to that, you were given certain thoughts that could likely explain why the situation is like this.
Well, you see, there are two things Nigerians have to understand. If you are giving loans for repayment, you are better just keep your money.
I think that's by definition, that's what loan is.
No,
you repay.
There are, for example, the Jeep loan, it has no interest rate, so banks will say, how on earth do you make money to sustain it? Two, it has no collateral. And then banks will say, how do you get them to pay? So there are models of loans. But I can tell you, in this country, people must understand that if your criteria or your intention is just to give loan and get it back, you better keep your money. The idea should be, if I give you loan, I will follow you and ensure that you have the capacity and the capability and the strategy, transfer technology and skills. Make sure that you succeed. Anybody who takes loan for any business who does not succeed will not be able to pay. So success is a key factor. For example, in our JIP, right? I don't know their criteria, but we have a criteria to make sure that everybody gets
JIP
it.
on the NSI.
Yes, the government enterprise and empowerment program. These are loans, 50,000 to women, and then maybe 250,
You don't
300.
expect it back, do you?
Of course you do, but the criteria is this. First, we know that this is to solve poverty. Therefore, poverty is an issue. But you cannot just say poverty and share everything to poverty, because poverty index differ. Sokoto has 88%, Lagos have 43%. If you implement it on only poverty, Lagosians will complain. So we split it into 5 categories. First is equal distribution. Every state must get a figure that is equal. So we took 20% of the total lump sum and divided it, slashed it by 37. So bang, 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 bang. No matter how you complain, you will have that. The second, because you are tackling poverty, we take 40% and we use the poverty index that we have gotten from the Bureau of Statistics and prorated it on that. And then every state will get a number. On that criteria, Sokoto will get the highest and then Lagos will get the lowest. Then we take 20%, right? And we put it on population. When you put it on population, Lagos and Kano will get the highest lump as far as that index is concerned. And Bayelsa and FCT will be at the bottom. And then the last is on local government, so that you spread it. On that index, Kano will get the highest with their 44, and then Bayelsa with their 6 will get the lowest. So it is these 4 numbers, when you add, you will see a number. That number is not really the issue. The issue is the team now must make sure that this number is implemented, let's say in Bayelsa State. And then each beneficiary is given a chance to succeed. This technicality is what Nigeria doesn't do. I mean, if you give my mother 50,000 naira and you just walk away, and you come back after 3 months, you say, Mama, bring your 50,000. You may be shocked. But if you give my mother 50,000, and the next day you have somebody sitting with her to say, Mommy, you need to order for your groundnuts every Monday. And then you need to fry it on Tuesday. Then she's beginning to see sense. So you need to build this capacity in people. You need to build this competence, transfer this technology. Where you see that she can use 1 or 2 tools, you bring the tools and you introduce. This is how you implement this program.
So on this particular one, right, let's try to make sense of it. Because a lot of people take a look at the percentages and say this is outrageous. How could this happen? Why would the Northeast get 1% out of all the money, $483 million to that effect? Give me your understanding, million naira to that effect. What is your understanding of how the dynamics of the different regions have to do with this much more commercial approach to loans?
I think Nigerians must understand that dishing out loans to expect repayment is a business thing. There is a map that you get from Commonwealth Travel Office advising investors. If you look at that map, the 6 states of the Northeast is colored red. And the index says, don't go to these areas, they'll kill you. Tell me who will go and invest in this area, as long as that color is
even if it's not investment, even if it is loan.
No matter what it is, even to go there and deliver the palliatives and so on, because of the insecurity, it draws you back. Then there's the next level where they said, don't go to these places unless it is absolutely necessary. The places like Niger State, Kebbi, and so on, they are in this. The best places to invest is green. It will say, even if you want to go to this place, get our travel advice. But that is where Lagos is. And then the whole Niger Delta is in the second region where don't go to this place unless it is necessary. So when you look at this safety and security mapping, that is a factor in supporting investment for success. Certainly, you will understand with this kind of delivery.
Just before we go, the 500 billion, we don't know how they're going to spend it. We don't know if they're going to use your metrics or the stuff that you've left behind at the NSIP or the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs. What would your advice be, very briefly, to the Tinubu administration to cushion the effect of subsidy removal, the rising inflation, and the rising cost of living in this country, so that Nigerians can finally breathe that sigh of relief?
I think Mr. President should, respectfully, I advise that he should concentrate on the targeting process. If you concentrate on purifying the targeting process to ensure that whoever gets this palliative is the person that requires palliative, then things will be more effective.
Okay.
But if the palliative is thrown flat and the people who require, people who don't require are all getting the same thing, then you'll get a percentage that is actually like, in quote, a waste. So, Mr. President, sir, targeting is very, very important.
Dr. Binder, thank you very much for your insight and for the analysis this evening. We really appreciate you very much for stopping by.
Thank you so much.
Right. Okay, this is where we end today's conversation. Thank you very much for your time and company. Daily Politics returns tomorrow, and we hope to see you next time. My name is Abdullahi Ahmed. Thank you for your time.